Welcome back to the Nakamoto 101 sessions with Chisel and Doge, where we are breaking down the Bitcoin Whitepaper into little tiny chunks. So, Section 7, Reclaiming Disk Space, is about exactly what its title suggests. If you are keeping a bunch of independently verified ledgers of a large global digital money system, that is going to start taking up some data. And particularly when you're trying to transmit this over the internet and stuff, you want to move faster. So the beginning of this section sets up why it would be important to prune down data without losing kind of the verification, provenance, or legitness of the records that you're linking. And it's interesting, we found it interesting that it's only here that Satoshi explicitly mentions a Merkle tree, and there are actually a couple of the previously cited resources on timestamping and stuff like that are cited here. Um, and would you define what a Merkle tree is? Because we haven't actually introduced that concept in earlier sections.
Yeah, it's just it's a really efficient data structure for storing a large amount of stuff and being able to reference it easily without having to kind of look through all of it. So it's like storage and reference for like a limited amount of types of data. I'm not sure if it's limited, but yeah. So it's just, and because the data forms links to the things above it, it looks like a tree. So it was named a Merkle tree.
By Merkle, right? I think it was named like it looks like a tree, and it was created by Merkle. Merkle is one of the people cited for a Merkle tree, a foundational paper.
She's probably right.
Yeah, so good old Merkle. Thank you for your contributions. And that's actually, we're going to start including diagrams after the discussion group validated that that would be useful. So I can hold this up because you're going to do the animation.
Yeah, so where am I? So just a refresher from the last times. So the block's only really made of the hash of the block, or the header is made up of a couple things. It's the hash of the block that was before, the nonce, which is just the random number they put with it, and they hash it to find a valid next hash, and that valid next hash is the root hash of all the stuff that happens in that block. So all the transactions, where the money moves, and then if you'd move on to the next block that gets found, you'd take this and move it back here, put it with the new nonce, make another block. In some situations where a block is very old, this root hash is still containing all this information, but what can happen is transaction 0 can get spent, and it's not actually referencing any data that's still there anymore. So you're kind of safe. So then you don't need that anymore, but you still need this top piece because it's part of the next one too, and the next one has other stuff connected to it. But if all these went away, you could actually get rid of this whole thing. If these got spent somewhere else, now you don't need to store all that data anymore because those coins have moved. And then, as transactions get older and there's more things that have moved on to new addresses, you actually don't need to store all the data, as you don't need to know what used to be there under this little heading. You can just get rid of it if there's nothing left there. So over time, as money gets spent, you can prune away the blocks, prune away some of the data, and the blockchain becomes significantly smaller.
Yeah, and I think in Satoshi's example within the white paper, let me find. Yeah, it's hard to find what you're doing from behind here. Whoop, no.
Yeah, this is your turn. You thought it was,
and
you're having to hold it. Yeah,
boom.
And you have to hold it.
Yeah, transaction 2 had already been
so in that
pruned from the block.
Yeah, so on that side as well, only transaction 3 remains, so we have to kind of keep a lot of data. Not a lot, but we have to keep a couple extra pieces, but as more things move, more data gets saved.
Yeah. So that brings us to the end of reclaiming disk space and the kind of calculation of block header size that happens here. A block header with no transactions would be about 80 bytes. This is almost like the part of a part of the white paper in which Satoshi did the math. They did the math of just if we suppose blocks are generated every 10 minutes, 80 bytes times 6 times 24 times 365, it's basically making a informal sort of proof here of like blocks would gather very quickly, like we said at the beginning. And he even invokes Moore's law, which my understanding is it's not like quite, it's kind of like leveled out, but it was the thing of like we will exponentially invent more advanced microchips over time. So in terms of the block header size,
Tiny.
yeah, keeping it small,
Like
good for decentralization, good
Yeah.
for long-term decentralized systems.
Of course, yeah. So one of the main things is if you want something to really be decentralized, everyone needs to have access to it and easily. And Satoshi clearly had that in mind, and he calculated it to be, I believe, what is it, like 1.2 gigabytes per year is what would be required adding onto the blockchain if you only kept the headers, which is like, you know, we're to the point where like hard drives 1.2 gigabytes a year. That's nothing. So it's like possible to do to use Bitcoin in some ways that would require that little storage, and you could still be pretty comfortable with your levels of verification.
Yeah.
Yeah, not as many people do it that way though.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and see you
Next
next
time.
time.